Hello, friends and clients of JLW Immigration Law Group. I am Jennifer Walker Gates, immigration attorney, and I'm here today joined by the beautiful Elsa Guerra, also immigration attorney, who works with our firm. Thank you so much for being here, Elsa. How are you doing?
Oh, of course. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing okay. Glad to be here. We have some information to share today about a couple of really important points, one of which being that there's a new proposed regulation about the registration, the upcoming registration requirement. Um, and so I want to talk a little bit about what is in that proposed regulation, what's not in the proposed regulation, and just share like some breakdown with people about like kind of what it says. But before we even jump into that, Elsa, I would love to um, share with people a little bit about what we were talking about before we started regarding being safe online.
Yes.
What I know that we have historically like flashed people's questions up on the screen and called people's names and answered questions live on this Wednesday noon program, and I'm really happy to continue doing that. However, tell us a little bit more about kind of what we want to do to make sure people are staying safe.
Yeah. As Jennifer said, we love to answer your questions, any questions that you guys do have at the end of each segment on Wednesdays. However, we do want you guys just to be a little bit safer about the content that you're putting online. Just remember that everything that you post online is traceable. And moving on, I think it's very important to maybe put out a more generalized statement, or not include names. Make it a little less personal to your situation, just to avoid any potential issues that could come up later on. Jennifer and I were talking about how now you're forced to put your handles, your social media handles, on all of your applications. So be careful with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what we're going to start doing is making sure that when we read your questions, we are going to read them in a way that's sort of like a general hypothetical. Like if this happened, then what would happen? If that happened, then what might happen? Rather than like this happened to me and here's what I'm doing, or and not flashing handles and names of people, not saying individuals' names, just because I know that this right now is not at the top of anyone's list to be on the law enforcement side. I don't think anyone's watching our Wednesdays at noon. However, for individuals making applications, they are going to be searching online to see what people have posted. And so just in case, we want to be extra careful, extra safe in this time of heightened enforcement about how people are conducting themselves on our platforms. So as much as possible, we're gonna help keep things real, general, and high level, while also really trying to provide high quality, reliable information as best as we can. So Elsa, can you share? Let's talk about registration and the new proposed registration regulation. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of just generally what the regulation is proposing?
Of course. So the regulation is it's pretty broad. It says that all immigrants who were not fingerprinted or registered when applying for a visa, and who remain in the United States for 30 days or longer, have to apply for a registration, and it requires for you to get fingerprinted.
Right. And so, are there exceptions? Are there people who don't have to register?
Yes, there are exceptions. Those people that are exempted from having to register are visa holders who have already gone through the fingerprinting process. It says A visa holders, G visa holders, those in the United States, obviously, for less than 30 days. And there were a couple on the original um, on the USCIS website that I didn't mention, but DACA recipients. And do you remember any other ones, Jennifer?
So DACA and TPS, it's still not really clear. What was clear from the regulation is that information will not be used to prosecute, or no, you know what? That's part of the NTA policy. I'm sorry, I'm confusing new memos. According to the website, and the regulation doesn't really mention an I-821 form as being evidence of registration or a receipt notice for that. Like receipt notices for I-485 are listed as evidence of registration. So if you file an application for adjustment of status, then you get fingerprinted, then you're registered. But that may not be true for things like TPS. It may not be true for things like DACA I-601A. So those folks, and again, the main theme, I think, is like a lot still remains to be seen how this is going to be implemented and enforced, because it isn't super clear exactly how this is going to work in practice at all. So yeah, some forms are conspicuously missing from the list of like what constitutes proof of registration.
I also just want to point out, last time we had a live about this, the registration requirement. Somebody asked about whether those who are under the age of 14 needed to register. And now it's a little more clear. It says that if you're under the age of 14, a parent or guardian must register you.
Yes. What does it say about how you register? How do you do it if you were going to do it?
So there is now a form to fill out online. And after you submit the form, they send you to get your fingerprints taken.
Okay. And you have to do this online, right? Like this is an online thing. Okay. And so everybody is going to have a separate online account. Like children will need a separate online account. Parents will need a separate online account, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So what happens if somebody doesn't register according to this regulation?
Well, that is a very good question. The potential punishment for not registering is a fine of up to $5,000 or imprisonment of up to 6 months. But I think you had such a good explanation of why this is only a potential consequence. Can you explain a little bit?
Yeah. So the Immigration Nationality Act, the law that was written by Congress, contains a criminal penalty for failure to register, which is they're calling it a Class B misdemeanor. The fine is up to $5,000, like you said, and up to 6 months in jail. So since it's criminal, it would have to be proven in a court of law, in a criminal court of law, beyond a reasonable doubt that the person failed to register willfully, meaning they intentionally avoided registration. It's really not clear how, number one, it's really hard to prove a negative. As a prosecutor, your burden of proof is very high to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt, especially if you have to prove someone's mindset when they committed a crime. So, for example, if someone gets charged with burglary, you have to show that they intentionally or recklessly entered a building that they knew or should have known was someone's home or did not belong to them, or they weren't authorized to enter. But it's pretty simple to do that because they've been caught inside. They've been caught having done it, or they've been caught in the act of trying to do it. Whereas with this one, you're not caught with anything. You're just, maybe you don't have a paper, and then proving that you intentionally didn't get that paper is going to be very difficult for a prosecutor to do. So it's really not clear at this moment from these regulations, from this proposed regulation, what the risks and benefits of registering or not registering are going to be. It does not say anything about making you ineligible for an immigration benefit.
I think this is a good time to kind of tie in, why do you think this was even re-implemented? Or why do you think it's just now being reintroduced?
Yeah, that's a really great question and a really important point. The regulation specifies that its purpose is to help DHS enforce the immigration laws more effectively. So that this is a moment of heightened enforcement of immigration law. As we've seen, this administration is more interested in detaining people and deporting people who don't have current lawful status, and many who do. I've seen people deported recently who had cases ongoing in the immigration court. They had every right under the law to remain in the United States waiting for their hearings, but they were removed. And so the Palestinian activist who was arrested also has a right to be in the United States. And it is not clear exactly what grounds they're detaining him on, or under what ground they would revoke his lawful permanent resident status, because he doesn't have any criminal history. And so it is a moment where we are seeing the DHS and the executive branch kind of really testing the limits of what constitutes legal detention, what constitutes legal removal, and we really need to be prepared for that. And that is kind of the context in which this new regulation is being published.
Yes, I completely agree. Also, as you know, a lot of us know already, and we've been trying to really get out there. Being here without papers is most of the times a civil penalty, and this is kind of criminalizing that and making it so that they could try to, make you seem like a criminal. So I think also that is why it's being implemented right now.
Yeah. So we have a good question that I'm going to read. And it's a great general question, but I'm just going to read it directly off the comments without saying the name. But what would be the impact on future immigration benefits if you don't register? Given that it is now a crime to not register, would you have to answer yes on a future immigration application when asked if you commit a crime for which you have not been arrested? So what I would say to that is that failure to register is a crime if it's done intentionally. So if a client of mine was going to be applying for a benefit and they had failed to register, we would either, I don't know if what we will do is have people register as they are submitting their applications, or ask them to submit it, and then if the registration requirement hasn't been met, that's just not something we deal with in our office. I've seen a number of attorneys saying, like, we are not going to develop any expertise around registration. One of the problems that we're seeing as attorneys, as lawyers, with this registration requirement is that there is a constitutional protection against self-incrimination. So that question on the immigration forms itself is a little bit problematic, in the sense that everyone has a right in the United States not to say, hi, I committed a crime. And because it's the state's burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, if they allege I committed a crime, it's their job to prove I committed a crime. It is not my job to admit that I committed a crime, and certainly not my job to go incriminate myself, to turn myself in. So that is, I think, one of the reasons that there will likely be a lawsuit on this regulation and on the statutory provision itself, which was enacted during a time of war in I think it was 1940 when it was first enacted, and 1952 when it was actually published in the Act. And so that was a different time period. It was no one challenged it constitutionally at that time because it was never enforced. And so what we are seeing right now is potentially an issue with self-incrimination. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. Again, like, at this moment, I really don't know as an.
Oh, I think she froze. No. But I completely agree with what she's saying. It's really difficult to even say what us as legal practitioners would do, depending on even what the question says. If it says, "Did you intentionally not register?" I think it really depends. So we're not 100% sure how to handle that situation, depending on how the question is written. If there's further updates on the actual registration requirements. Like we said, it's pretty unclear at the moment, but hopefully when we get more information, we can answer that question more specifically. I don't see a lot of questions actually today, and I hope Jennifer is able to get back on the live. So okay, so just to recap on what we said, once again, I'm going to reiterate that there are not very solid, and there's not a lot of solid information online to give you guys very, very good information back to you. But for now, just know that this registration requirement requires those immigrants who haven't been fingerprinted for a benefit while they're here in the United States to register and to keep proof of that registration. If you're under 14, remember that your guardian has to register you, or they will also suffer some consequences. What potential consequences they're talking about, we're not totally sure, but they have outlined the criminal punishment as the $5,000 and I think the imprisonment of up to 6 months or something like that. But if there are no other questions, actually there might be one more. Give me 1 second. Okay, so someone asked potentially if you give your fingerprints for your driver's license, does this apply as having registered? And Jennifer is back, I think. But to answer your question, it depends. If you applied for a benefit here in the United States, if you have an EAD card, you did biometrics for that, then you should be fine. But there is a list online of things that forms that you can use to prove that you have registered. So I would have to check that list and make sure that you are covered under that form. I apologize. Jennifer is trying desperately to come back into our live and it's not working. So I think, hello. Hi, she's back. And she's frozen again. Are you back? We can see you, Jennifer. Can you hear us?
Okay, I can't tell if I'm on at this
yes,
point.
You are. You're here.
Can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I am sorry about that. I am we're dealing with an internet outage here in the Austin office all of a sudden.
Oh my gosh.
So
worst time.
I'll try to stay on as best I can. I'm on my hotspot. It is terrible timing. Okay. So are we able to move forward and do questions as best as possible?
Yeah. There's only one final question.
Was there another question?
Yes, there's only one last question. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? No.
I can hear you. Hopefully.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. Sorry, guys. Technical issues. All right. So I'm seeing a question about whether fingerprints, first of all, do fingerprints for driver's licenses count as registration? According to the proposed regulations, that would not qualify, as far as I'm aware. This is more about registering directly with Department of Homeland Security. They don't handle driver's licenses. So in most cases, I would imagine if there is some kind of integration or something in the future, maybe that would work. Otherwise, I think that registration for DHS purposes is going to be separate from driver's license purposes.
Oh, Jennifer, I have a question.
And then
along that line. when you register, oh, I mean, if you're getting a driver's license, I'm assuming that you have an EAD. Do you think that the biometrics that you do for an EAD would apply?
So EADs are employment authorization documents. That's a work permit, and it is listed as evidence of registration. So if an individual has a work permit, they are considered registered. Now, what's not super clear is like, what if your what if your work permit's expired? Are you still registered? I think so. I think once registered, always registered. But I don't know for sure. That's not clear from the information either. Um, so that's a great question, though. The other good question I'm seeing is, do people need to pay for the biometrics fees? The proposed regulation specifically right now says, at this time, we're not charging, but we might in the future. And so then it goes through this whole long thing about how much it costs USCIS to collect biometric information. And there is a suggestion that there could be a $30 fee applied to the registration process in the future. Right now, however, it appears they intend to publish this form and start this requirement without a fee attached. So we'll see. And yeah, there's another question. Go ahead, Elsa.
Okay, so it's asking, so hypothetically speaking, what happens if you don't register? Would they have your address and information, and if they can use that to potentially come after you if you've never committed a crime? I think that's a great question. I think the topic or the most important thing we really want you guys to know is that the administration has outwardly said that they're going to use this to locate the people that are here without documentations. So I think it's very important to keep that in mind, that this registration requirement is for the purpose of keeping track of those people that are here that don't have legal status.
Yeah. I see myself going dark again. So sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So frustrating. So yeah, it is the intention of the registration is to help DHS enforce immigration law. I do think, in light of what I know about their capacity and things, that if everyone who is to actually did register, I don't know that they would have capacity to target people who aren't serious threat to the community.
Just a little bit. Can you hear us?
I'm so sorry.
That's
so
okay. No, it's
Um,
totally fine. You are breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. My signal is not great. I'm on my hotspot. My signal inside here isn't great, and the internet went down in our office. So, it's maddening. So okay. So yeah, I think that it is going to be an individual determination, at least for me with my clients, in terms of what kind of guidance we provide people, what kind of support we provide people with respect to these questions. It's going to be very much case by case, and making sure that people understand risks and benefits of whatever it is that they decide to do. We still don't know how this is going to impact applications. We really don't even know how it might impact detentions and removal proceedings, and questions like that. So it could just be something that turns out to be a bunch of much ado about nothing. We did see that happen with some regularity during the last Trump administration, where there were some proposals to try some new things, to try to change some ways of doing things, and the courts ended up shutting them down. So we'll see what happens with that. It could happen again here.
Yeah, and we are praying for a lawsuit. Hopefully, before it goes into effect, there is a lawsuit that prevents it from going into place.
Yeah, there again are some serious constitutional concerns about this, privacy concerns, self-incrimination concerns. Like our Constitution says that we don't have to go turn ourselves in for committing a crime, that it is law enforcement's job, the state's job, to figure out if we've committed a crime. Now, agree with it or not, that's what the system says, right? It might not be always a super victim-friendly approach. It was created out of a context where the founders of our country came from an environment where people could be accused of crimes, rounded up, anything that they said against the government was criminalized. It was a very oppressive environment. And so these really robust protections were put in place for criminal defendants because the government was really abusing individuals, abusing the criminal law at the time that, and the King of England is who was doing it. And the people who founded our government did that as a reaction to that kind of practice. So we don't want to see that kind of practice come back, but it's been a long time since that. And I think people have, our current government has really begun to push the limits again of what will be allowed under our Constitution, and especially for non-citizens. So we will have to see. We've got some more questions. Elsa, what do you see over there?
I think a final question is, do you think it is safer for immigrants to take the risk to be fined and not registered, or would it be a better option to register? And that is a very valid question. I think that's what we're teetering with as well. A more individualized approach on your situation would probably help you and help us assess. So please, call an attorney that you trust, and they'll probably go through it with you.
Yeah. To be really clear also, as attorneys, I can never advise my clients to knowingly do something illegally. And so all I can do is either, share about risks and benefits or refer.
Oh, she's frozen again, but I think she was going to say refer you to maybe a guidance or the consequences that will arise when you do not register. And hopefully that'll get more concrete and we'll get more information on that later. Hopefully there will be a lawsuit. It really is up in the air right now, so we don't know, but that is a really good question. I think that is all of the questions. As always, we really do promote everyone to speak to an attorney. And you can contact us at 512-633-1785 to set up a consultation with one of us. And just as a reminder, we also speak Spanish. So thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again next week. Goodbye.